aware of the fact that this presentation would take on a spiritual context simply from the letter that you received as being invited to this presentation. And some of my friends were wondering if I was going to announce that I was going to become a preacher. But no, that's not what this presentation is about. But it does involve something in terms of service, servanthood, servitude, and mission. And I wanted to share with you what it is that I believe I've received a ministry to perform for the city of Piqua. I have been a Sunday school teacher for years and years. I started teaching Sunday school a year after I was baptized, and that was starting at age 13, and so I've always been involved in Sunday school. And I picked up my summer quarter of the Bible Expositor and began reading it, and as I read it, I became encouraged, even emboldened, particularly if you cast your eyes on this section right here. It reads, "Anyone who answers the call and makes the choice to become a servant of God is first prepared by God for his specific job. God also gives him access to his power to perform the required task. When we look back over the course of our lives, we can usually see a correlation between our past experiences and the specific job God has called us to do." And as I thought about those words and reflected upon those words, I said to myself, you know, that is exactly right. I instinctively knew that the things that had occurred in my life were preparing me for this moment. Such things as, I want to share with you what the knowledge of the history culminated in, and the reason why there is a spiritual connectivity associated with what I want to accomplish. The date is January 23rd, 2005. As usual, I'm preparing for my Sunday school lesson at the last minute. And I get up about 4 o'clock in the morning, so I'm reading my Sunday school lesson. But as I also read the lesson, I'm thinking about, you know, tuning in to a TV program relating to Black history. It's America's Black Forum. I wrote this down because all of a sudden I received a flash. Don't know why, don't know where it came from, but all of a sudden I had to write down right. And then I just as quickly got recognizing individual greatness in or through historical testament. Boom. There it was. Don't know why, but there it was. Just wrote it down, noted it. January 23rd, 2005. And I want you to, you know, pick up on some other things because it, you know, it really is kind of a, you know, a very spiritual kind of situation. Notice what the Sunday school lesson was for that day. Jesus called for total commitment. Jesus called for total commitment. Well, what? To what? Where is this going? You know? Well, obviously it has something to do in connection with right. Total commitment. That was the message I was given. Okay? Now, I wondered about this and tried to dismiss it. Well, this really doesn't, I don't know where this is going, what this has to do with anything. But basically, I was dismissive of this spiritual kind of connectivity that is beginning to unfold. But something happened even the next week that said, isn't that interesting? Now, again, right stood for what? Recognizing individual greatness through historical testament. The next week's lesson, check it out. The next week's lesson, January 30th, Jesus defined true greatness. Okay? Jesus defined true greatness. So I'm no longer, dismissive. I said something is here that I have to attend to, have to be, aware of, have to be about, trying to bring to greater clarity. So what about this right? Well, I'd already gotten the acronym. Now I had to begin to develop what that acronym really embodied. And so here's what we came up. Right? This concept embodies the concern over the historical bias in naming patterns and the contemporary artificial barriers limiting the expansion of ownership identity. Now by that I mean, like public properties, streets, buildings, highways, bridges, what have you, okay? Basically, what we've done and are continuing to do is to perpetuate that which is not necessarily the direction that Jesus would have us to look at in terms of determining greatness. Okay? Our greatness is based upon who has the greatest wealth, who has the greatest power, how that power is manipulated, even abused, in terms of who it is that we want to confer ownership to. Now that may not be always the case, but that has been a part of the problem, and I think it continues to be today. We put or place a great deal of value on the material, who it is that can offer the most in the way of money. And those are the people that we honor, memorialize. So Wright seeks to reevaluate the standards of heroism and societal acceptance of those who may have been deemed not to be valued or worthy of having their names adorn public facilities. Wright advocates a proactive effort in naming public properties that is more reflective of the diversity within the community and that acknowledges from a historical perspective the merit of greater inclusion with regards to race, gender, ethnic, and national origin in expanding ownership identity. Now, here's where I want to go. Our organization, the AAGGMB, came to Piqua today. And they came to Piqua largely because they wanted to experience the canal boat ride that the Randolph freed people had experienced in coming eventually to the Miami Valley. After we left the Johnston farm where we had that canal boat ride, we went to Rossville. And of course, Rossville was the settlement of the Randolph freed people. John Randolph manumitted his slaves. That means simply that he took the time to sit down and write a will freeing his slaves upon his death. That will, as some of you are aware, most of you who are the AAGGMB people know that Carolyn Dorsey, for example, at our last monthly meeting, spent a lot of time talking about the John Randolph freed people. So I'm not going to, belabor that. But the point is that Randolph was a person who was well connected to the most prestigious families in America. The Washingtons, the Lees, Jeffersons, all of those were people that he rubbed shoulders with and who were relatives of. But here was a man that over a period of time recognized that it was wrong. It wasn't right. It was wrong to continue to perpetuate the peculiar institution of slavery. And he was determined to do something about it. So he drew up a will freeing his slaves and, of course, sending his slaves into free territory because they couldn't reside in the slave state of Virginia. And of course, the area that he had purchased for their settlement was located in Mercer County, which is not too far from here, and it was an area just along or in the vicinity of the Miami-Erie Canal. The Miami-Erie Canal was the means by which the people had left Virginia and headed through the Kanawha Valley of West Virginia up to the Ohio River, and then boarding canal boats making their way up the Great Miami River and the Miami-Erie Canal through Piqua and on up to Auglaize and Mercer County, Shelby and County as well. But of course we know the story, and again I'm not going to spend much time with that. The fact was that these slaves whose land had been purchased for them were denied the opportunity to settle the land. And at gunpoint they were forced back down the canal and were allowed to settle across the river from Piqua in a place that we just visited, which was Rossville. From there they dispersed to other communities in Shelby County, Troy, West Milton, in Miami County, in addition to Piqua. The original Randolph slaves, a great family of 383 individuals whose arduous trek west to Ohio as freed people in 1846 is a true American saga that rightfully deserves a place in the milestones of our region's history. I agree with that, concur 100%. This elusive recognition, denied through decades of discrimination, for a moment in time that saw them journeying hundreds of miles to be dispossessed of all that was legally theirs, is now a growing reality in the history of this area. Suffering humiliation, personal indignities, and injury at the hands of some, and compassion and concern at the hands of others. They began their new life in Ohio, evolving around the churches they formed and the growth of their families. Here in Piqua, we've had the good fortune of having a city historian who has also documented the plight of the Randolph freed people. Our city historian is Jim Oda, and Mr. Oda has written a book or a pamphlet that's called Piqua's Black Heritage, 1800 to 1900, in which he states the contributions and historical heritage of the nation's black community are often overlooked. You're seeing this theme, right? Overlooked, neglected. In the study of American history, this is partially due to an inherent prejudice not my words, and partially to a simple ignorance of black history. This work is a small attempt at bringing together the history of a rural black population in 19th century Piqua, Ohio. He also points out the fact that there are others within the community who have made documentation or research efforts to also tell this story of the Randolphs. And of course, those of you who are members of the AAGGMD, this is Helen Gilmore, the lady who's provided us with the hospitality at the York Ryle Museum. Here's another indication of exactly what Mr. Oda was referring to. U.S. history, it says, it's a political cartoon, says, "No, Charles, you will find the abolitionist movement, Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, and civil rights in the Black Studies Department. This is U.S. history." So that's the message that has long been taught in the schools and educational institutions within the United States, that anything connected with black history ought to be relegated to a place of segregation or exclusion, not inclusion. Okay? And this is a pamphlet that was prepared by Helen Gilmore. She has written and done some research herself, and I believe that there was a lady that she was hosting at the Rossville Randolph Freedom Days celebration this afternoon, who is also working on a book on the Randolphs, and I'm eagerly awaiting the release of that book. But Helen gave us a little information here that I thought was worthwhile. The first black church was organized among the Randolphs by Jacob Emmons in 1857, and it was obviously a house church in Rossville. That house church evolved into what was later called the church, the African Baptist Church, and in 1885 a new church was built on the north side of Park Avenue by these Randolph freed peoples. And of course, I wanted you to recognize that this is the church that you are in. This is a church that was built by the Randolph peoples. Now, here's what I'm eventually getting to. Several months ago, I was offered an invitation to speak at Edison State Community College. And I'm not sure if I chose the subject or the subject was chosen for me. Mrs. Blevins is saying that she chose the subject and asked me to come in and talk on the Randolph people. Why? I have no idea why you did that, but again, it just kind of reinforced that it was one of those in a series of meant to be experiences. And in talking with her class, I discovered that almost no one, now these are college students, but almost no one in that class had heard of the Randolph freed people. All of them were within this area. They all live within Miami, Shelby, Darke County, all of them are within this area. Almost none of them had heard previously of the Randolph freed people. And what was really interesting was that I had called in over to Mercer County, to the public library, in preparing my presentation to the students, and asked them about some specific information relating to the Randolph people. The librarians, the resource and research personnel at Mercer County had no knowledge of the Randolph freed people. I said, "You're kidding me. That's not possible." But she was, apologetic, but didn't know exactly who or what it was that I was referring to. It was as simple as that. So here's what this has evolved into. And I began sketching in my mind some things that were just seemingly coming to me in terms of what we could do to bring about the recognition that was due these people and those people who made their lives at least tolerable in this new place and environment. And had some things in mind. Here's some things that I just, wanted to bring to the attention. I wanted to, set the left bank by right again, referring to the acronym, recognizing individual greatness through historical testament. And I thought that, one of the things that, in my vision, that could be done to promote the Randolph freed peoples and their place within the upper Miami Valley. A monument, this is important, this is because this embodies the whole concept of right. I think it's important for us to memorialize the Randolph people's struggles from slavery to freedom, to freedom settlements. Piqua exhibited a charitable attitude towards the freedmen. A white man allowing a woman with a water bucket at the well and with ladle quenching the thirst of the freedmen also could be incorporated in the monument. There must be Quakers providing shelter and work represented within the monument, because the Quakers particularly were active in aiding the development and sheltering the Randolph peoples, particularly in the southern portion of Miami County. As a matter of fact, in the 1890s, I think there were a larger number of black Randolph descendants in West Milton, in the West Milton area, than there was in Troy and Piqua. And that was because of the Quakers. So we need to pay homage to those who got it right, who did right all along. This is something I think is really important. Dreaming big. A glass-like star high above the tree line with powerful light symbolizing the way to freedom north, and also symbolizing children of the light. Every night, I want to see descending out of the trees over there in Rossville a telescopic type device, hydraulically operated. As night falls, this light is coming out of the trees, coming up, and it's dominating the skyline of Piqua. Now, for some reason, I think that that's really a kind of, strong symbolism here in terms of these people getting their just due, being duly recognized, and having been regarded as children of the light, the salt of the earth, God's people who were dissed. So basically, this is the area. And those of you who are familiar with Piqua, and even those of you, when we came across the bridge there, you noticed that flag, I hope. Okay? So instead of, or in addition to the flag, Old Glory, we would have something else reflective of glory. You can even see a little star here, and I don't know why that appeared there. All of it, I don't know, but there it is. Now that's amazing. I don't know why that showed up just like that, but there would be a telescopic thing, and there would be a star, a bright and shining star, maybe just a little higher than the flag. Okay? Instead of Old Glory, it would be reflecting God's glory. And that ought to be elevated, I think, to the highest level. Okay? So, the time is now for questions, mine and yours. If not now, when? Because that's what it's going to come down to. If not now, when? And I can anticipate all of the, concerns or issues. Well, Piqua's doing this right now. Piqua's got that right now. This is not something that is affordable. This is something that's going to require a great deal of money, resources, yada, yada, yada. All of which is true. Okay? Should that deter us? Dissuade us from responding to the call? We want to call upon, or from my perspective, I want to call upon and extend to everyone the opportunity to invest in this project. And I think that there are a lot of people, for a lot of different reasons, why this would be something that they would want to endorse or embrace. Now again, it's my personal thinking, and I'm thinking that there are a lot of people, perhaps in Mercer County, who want to do the right thing. I think that there are a lot of people, who simply in this town want to do the right thing just from an investment standpoint, in terms of drawing tourism, or in terms of, doing the right thing. I may be wrong about that. And I may be, wrong about a timeline in terms of, having to do this in connection with the hotel or that city project or this and so forth and so on. I'm not dissuaded, And again, the timeline doesn't have to be necessarily now, but I think that we need to make a total commitment now to the completion of the project sometime in the future. Would we be making a greater kind of statement of acceptance, inclusion, and ownership identity if we embark upon the course that I've outlined? I think. Again, it's a personal vision for Piqua. And in the bottom line, I know a lot of people are they're going to analyze this and say, well, this, that, and so forth and so on. But my whole approach has been spiritual. Okay? This is my whole approach. So, God is able to do what we ask, able to do what we think, able to do what we ask or think, able to do all that we ask or think, able to do above all that we ask or think, able to abundantly above all that we ask or think, able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. I'm going to close with this. I am only one, but I am one. I can't do everything, but I can do something. What I can do, I ought to do. And what I ought to do, by the grace of God, I will do. Thank you very much for coming out, and I appreciate your attention.